Assalamualaikum, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome to another episode of How to Pakistan 2024. Fasi, I'm going to say again, you look fantastic.
ये तो मुझे वो हंसी आ रही है, I forget his name, जिसने लिखा था कि यार next episode 2025.
That's a really nice guy.
He's a really good guy.
I think he's a doctor.
And he's
twins हैं, इसका भाई भी जो है
वो भी बहुत funny है.
They're really nice guys.
Now more on Insta than he is on Twitter.
Well, that's what all the celebrities do. He's like hot stuff, apparently. He's even better looking than you are. All right. So, speaking of good looking,
yes.
What did we decide? Tell our viewers what we're doing with these.
What we're doing today is that.
Oh, it's the. Do you know the name of the episode? यार फिर से इतनी कम देर के लिए क्यों लगाया है? इसको इधर लगा रहे हैं. Election चांद रात party.
Manifesto.
Party manifesto. But you see the little play on words there?
Yes.
ये हमारे नौजवान है, मैं नाम नहीं बताऊंगा because फिर लोग आके जो है ऑफर कर देते हैं क्योंकि ये सिर्फ यहाँ बिस्किटों के लिए काम करते हैं मेरे साथ, लेकिन फिर लोग आके सैलरीज ऑफर करते हैं, ले जाते हैं हमारे लोगों को.
हाँ, तू कहते थे कि like I'm giving you experience.
Biscuit.
हाँ.
But also, आज वो crusties वाले don't. And I say crusties because actually every Pakistani brand that's like kicking ass, we should be. So there's this donut company in Islamabad. It's called Crusties.
There's another one that's also really good.
एक सेकंड, मैं तर्क करती हूँ. तुझसे राह नहीं गया कि मैं मतलब जो है कोई अच्छा महाजर ब्रांड है और तुमने जरूर अपना कोई डालना था बीच में. I have no idea if they're महाजर. कहने में क्या? Speaking of महाजर, you can tell I'm very excited about this episode.
Yes.
Super excited.
Yes.
Today we're joined by Maulana Fazlur Rahman. There.
Yes.
There it is. Of course, Altaf Bhai. Of course, Bilawal. Of course, मेरा और आपका leader.
Imran Khan.
President, Prime Minister.
Yes.
And handsome in chief.
Imran Khan.
Savior of democracy. Godfather of democracy.
Godfather of democracy.
But savior of democracy, really, and an architect of this order, Nawaz Sharif. अच्छा लगे या ना लगे. And closest to my heart. Sirajul Haq. We've missed a few leaders. इसमें अहमद वली खान नहीं है. मरियम नवाज शरीफ नहीं है. आसिफ अली जरदारी नहीं है.
शहबाज नहीं है.
शहबाज साहब नहीं है. As you know, is among my many favorites. So I'm just gonna, as we do this, I mean, since we're doing video, it's gonna be weird. I'm gonna do a lot of these things. But मैंने आपकी चाय लेके आनी है.
Okay.
So I'm bringing you your tea.
अच्छा, interesting thing is इस साल, of course, manifestos wasn't such a big deal because manifestos क्यों होते हैं?
अच्छा, पहले big deal थे. So I mean, of course, Pakistani democracy really hinges on the quality of manifestos.
नहीं, I would say 2013, 2018 में.
2013 में इसलिए थे कि कुछ आपके दोस्तों ने, और उसमें काफी organizations involved थी. We actually used to do an assessment. The parties actually thought, I think, they worked hard on it. I mean, this time it's been really weird.
नहीं, this time उनको पता है कि यार ये manifesto पे भी नहीं है, voter पे भी नहीं है.
You're going to be huge on the Adil Raja Heather Mehdi circuit. You're going to be the next big ththing. और करो बकवास.
तुझे वीज़े नहीं चाहिए, तुझे बाहर नहीं जाना.
मुझे चाहिए नहीं ना. That's your problem.
That's my problem.
That's your problem, Smelly. अच्छा देखो. So on what we're doing today, it's the election Chaand Raat party manifesto. And so what we're going to do is analyze the manifestos.
Yes.
And this is a great idea. Fasi, thank you for this brilliant idea. I want to start with an area that you're an expert in, which is foreign policy.
Foreign policy.
And of course, this is all set up, right? But let me tell you the setup because it's brilliant. So Fasi walked in to prepare.
Yes.
So this new element in the podcast is instead of a conversation between you and I'm constantly feeling like I'm obligated to look at our viewers.
That's true.
पहले इसको resolve कर लें, इसका क्या करूं?
You don't have to look at anyone. You can just.
No, I want to look at you, baby. Okay, so we're not looking at the camera. चलना मेरा फिर side view जो है ना अच्छा आना चाहिए. अच्छा, anyway. So we were talking about this.
Yes.
And this PILAP organization is great, and they do some really interesting public interest litigation work. They're based out of Karachi. Some heroic young lawyers and a bunch of philanthropists have been supporting it. So इन्होंने 15-20 पेज का ये वो summary बनाई है of all the, it's really useful of all the manifesto points in the three parties manifestos. So the three big ones: PPP, PML-N, and PTI, or PTI, PML-N, and PPP. I'm saying this in multiple orders ताकि जितने नाराज लोग हो सकते हैं वो ना हो. So PTI, PPP, PML-N, PPP, PML-N, PTI, PTI, PML-N, PPP. I think that's the combination.
Yes.
Okay. So PILAP put together this. PILAP or PILAP? PILAP. They put together this dastavez. And
khulasa.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Very impressive, especially for a pack two. You know, the honorable, fierce warrior nation that is the Pashto.
Or also...
Or the Pashto.
Pack 2, second grade.
So... हमने कहा कि हम इस पे why don't we present this or our perspective on the summary version.
Yes.
And then as you walked in, you said कि भाई देख ले. PILAP ने ठीक summary बनाई है नहीं.
मैं डर गया. मैं कि सब कुछ इसमें कर रहे हैं. इन्होंने गलत.
Because हमने सारा रटा हुआ था.
रटा हुआ.
Suddenly Fussy walks in and he's like, what if they get it wrong? And I was like, oh shit, we didn't think of that. So then Fussy found a mistake. And where did you set it up? क्या हुआ क्या था?
So what happened was that a couple of days ago, वैसे ही I was going through these not resumes, these manifestos. They are resumes.
But these aren't the resumes that were sent to
no, but this one mistake is the resume that was sent.
Okay, you guys are going to figure out why we're laughing in just 1 second. So what I want you to put on screen, should we put it up?
Put it up.
पहला वाला लगाओ. इसको बड़ा करो यार.
हाँ, तो ये सबसे पहले डिस्ट्रीब्यूट
होता है. इसको बड़ा करके दिखाओ.
ये स्लाइड. ठीक है. I was going through this like मुशर्रफ. यार ये तो नहीं है मैनिफेस्टो में. ये तो बहुत ही polite है इसमें.
So you read what the PILAP summary was, and you said that this is not what I saw in their manifesto.
This is not what I saw. It says so. Yeah, go ahead.
Well,
here it says development of relations with India on the basis of regional peace and economic development.
अगले वाले पे आओ.
Primacy to be given to the resolution of disputes, especially...
This is the actual manifesto. We can see it on the screen.
Right? We can see it there.
This is very high tech.
This is very high tech. So what they did is now we come to the thing they distributed first, which was this presentation. Or usme,
no, but first let's assess this, because just for context, obviously the one big question mark is Nawaz Sharif going to be doing what he was doing with India before, which is trying to build a peace process. Ab uski mein judgment mein abhi, because we're just trying to assess the manifesto, so I'm not going to share a lot of my judgment. We'll just do like a big picture analysis. So your question was, you said to me, say what you said to me based on what you had seen before this.
So what I said was like, yaar, ye nahi hai. इन्होंने क्या किया था कि the chief of army staff had a couple of days before said कि कोई भी चीज नहीं है, पहले हम ये India को resolve. And then when we took out this slide, it said exactly that on the first thing that was distributed, but it's differently put elsewhere.
So that's interesting.
Yeah.
Because when you read the actual manifesto, bring up the actual manifesto. Yeah. When you see this, leave this on the screen for a bit. You guys can download it. We're going to share the links on the YouTube thing, where you can click on the links or at least copy and paste them. So this is not PILAP. This is the actual PML-N thing. And it says clearly, essentially, what the traditional point has been. कि यार हमने इंडिया के साथ basically ताल्लुकात जो है वो ठीक करने हैं. And there's nothing per se wrong with that. It's a valid viewpoint. It's a viewpoint I've advocated for many years. My position has changed, as you know, and we can talk about that in a separate episode, frankly. But you said कि that's not PILAP ने जो लिखा. So PILAP took this and basically reproduced its manifesto.
They did the right job.
So PILAP ने ठीक किया. अच्छा अब बता कि तूने क्या देखा था? Now go back to the previous one.
मैंने जो देखा था was their
ये वाला.
PPT presentation they sent everyone first.
Which जहाँ पे इंडिया वाला section है.
वहाँ पे वो एक chest beating है. Like how dare you even consider?
So it's basically the Asim Munir and Musharraf Zaidi position on it.
Position on it. ठीक है ना?
आपने note किया मैंने क्या किया?
हाँ, well done. ठीक है ना? तू मुझे भी निकालेगा future में.
निकालेगा नहीं.
नहीं, you'll save me.
Exactly. Yes, of course, absolutely, inshallah. तू मेरे साथ है.
So read
the last Pashtun standing.
ठीक है. So read what it says. मैं तो यहाँ से नहीं पढ़ सकता.
मैं भी कोशिश करता हूँ, but it's actually remarkably different from what was sent. Actually, I can read it because we have the original. So this is fantastic. PML-N strongly holds the position that normalization of ties with India cannot take place till New Delhi reverses the unilateral measures taken on August 5th, 2019, relations anchored in mutual respect, shared vision for regional stability and economic growth.
Yeah.
This is the...
You know what happened, right?
What happened?
In the core committee meeting, somebody said, sir, मुश्किल है कि PowerPoint ही पढ़ रहे ठीक है ना WhatsApp कर दे असली चीज हम manifesto में लिखी देते हैं. They might not be wrong.
So this is actually breaking news, right? Because the manifesto that the PML-N has been sending to people and its actual manifesto are actually materially different, which is fantastic. This is a great beginning, I think, Fasi, for the conversation I wanted to have.
Yeah.
मुझे इस पे जो खटका हुआ वो यही पिलाप वाला मैंने पहले देखा था और मैं इतना disappointed था that I actually told Uzair Yunus, who's a mutual friend, मैंने उज़ैर को कहा मैं वोट नहीं दे रहा. And it was based on the first page of this document, इसके बाद वाला.
Okay.
जो economic policy है, when you go through that, this feels like it's written by. Now I want to be nice because some of these people I know, and I know they're sincere. But I mean, it's frankly shocking that seriously experienced. I mean, how have they come up with this?
So, even the first time, actually, the one that really struck people was when people first heard what the PPP wanted to do. ठीक है ना, इसमें freebies भी है, इसमें salary increases भी है, and an inflationary.
उसमें तो मैंने publicly भी react किया था कि this is a joke. Yeah.
This is exactly. लेकिन Shehzad Ghayas asked this question from Bilawal, and he gave what I thought was semi-reasonable. He says, fine, this is my...
What seemed like a reasonable
answer. What seemed like a reasonable answer. Like, this is my wish list, right? This is what I want to achieve. लेकिन उसमें यही सवाल आता है, because it's interesting, like you say, this is like, when you put all of these next to one another, तो उसमें ये एक 4% एक साल में 5%, 6%, PPC is 8%.
देखो, there's a risk of contradiction here, so one should be fairly honest. These are aspirational goals, right?
Which is fine.
So I think that's fine. But I do think that at least on economic policy, which should be the most urgent, सब तीनों पार्टियां कह रही हैं ये सबसे urgent issue है. Even PTI जो कह रही है कि यार हमारे साथ ज्यादती हो रही है और उनके साथ ज्यादती हो रही है.
Yes.
Even they say कि जो primary issue है वो address करना है economic का.
Yeah. And although I have to say one thing, the other thing that I find odd, which I would imagine would be, which I found disappointing in all the manifestos, is that when you're coming into an economic situation such as this and security and, even political divisions kind of situation, everyone just say England mein hota hai aur year one aap specify kar dete.
Yeah.
Right? Because that is what's going to drive everything.
But I mean, part of this is also like people are once bitten, twice shy. Like the PTI had a 90-day sort of plan. Now the plan wasn't like much, right? Yeah. But at least there was that thinking कि यार हम पहले 90 दिन में 100 दिन में ये करेंगे.
But at least there was a recognition that the first 90 days is
you don't see that now.
You don't see that at all.
What I'm disappointed by, if I could ask my colleague to pull up the external debt slide. So as you know, Fasi, I'm also using this opportunity to kind of just market some of our material, and so thank you for allowing me to do that. Debt wala slide agar jo hai wo screen pe le aaye, and we'll start. I mean, look, a lot of this is double real income for wage earners and increase minimum wage in real terms by 8%. And 8%. जब inflation 30%
exactly.
So 8% increase is what are we talking? Like it doesn't feel like it's written by serious people, right? Now here's the PPP का हो गया अभी PML नून पे आते हैं क्योंकि वहाँ पे तो बिल्कुल ही बहुत बड़े-बड़े छक्के मारे हुए हैं लेकिन ये देखें PTI कहती है
one credit to PPP.
The non-starter.
I agree, but it's something that we have to get round to.
Sure.
Yeah.
And as you know, we have a remarkable convergence on this issue.
Yes.
But I also don't think we have any answers to the problem that is a legitimate problem.
ठीक है ना?
अच्छा, खैर उस पे आते हैं. यार ये देखो, PTI कहती है reduce public debt according to again the PILAP thing, which we thought had mistakes in it. We discovered that it's
PILAP is accurate.
कि 2 नंबरी जो है वो पिलाप ने नहीं की, वो किसी और ने की. मैं नाम नहीं लेता पार्टी का, लेकिन you can rewind and watch the last 10 minutes or 5 minutes.
Yes.
So we'll get to PML-N, but PTI says, or at least PILAP says that PTI says that we're going to reduce public debt to below 60% of GDP.
Yeah.
Okay. How do I do this? First, you can see a slide. This is from a bigger piece of work we're doing on external debt.
Yes.
But I just wanted to share the numbers so that people get a sense of हम बात क्या कर रहे हैं.
Yeah.
जो quantum है वो क्या है? 60% of GDP would be roughly इस वक्त क्या है? Percentage इधर लिखी हुई होगी कहीं. I believe it's above 70%. I think it's 76%.
The current debt
is the
to
current
GDP.
Debt to GDP.
Okay.
So what PTI is saying is, and let's give them benefit of the doubt, कि वो 5 साल में 16% जो percentage है वो करेंगे. तो आज के debt पे 10% of today's GDP is $37 billion.
No way it's happening.
20% is $64 billion.
No way that's happening.
Now, if you look at the size of debt, and of course, this slide is part of a bigger piece, and we'll share that. Let's come back to me and Fussy. तो जब आप ये size देखते हैं, तो the first question or concern you have is, what are they thinking? Reducing public debt by 16%. That's a formidable task.
Yeah.
Again, just to do the quick, $370 billion roughly GDP है. 10% is 37. So let's go not 20 or whatever उन्होंने कहा है, 60%.
Yeah.
Let's say कि 65 भी कर लेते हैं ना, 75 अभी है, 65 हो जाता है. 10% is $37 billion. But not all of it is external debt. A big chunk is external, and another chunk is domestic.
Yes.
The bigger problem is actually the domestic, because the way you stay alive as a state is by printing money.
Yes.
So I just, and the PTI has smart people. Like Shaukat Tariq is a really smart guy. The Jahangir Taimur Jhagra is a really smart guy.
Yeah.
When they put this together, I guess I'm asking you, what is the thought process of experienced former executives and cabinet members?
I almost hate to say it, but मुझे वो लग रहा है कि like ये वही expat Pakistanis हमें बेचेंगे. Like that was a real
No, wait.
Don't tell me it's there.
Attract investments from Pakistanis abroad to increase remittances.
ठीक. I mean, that's a fine thing to have. Everyone should have that. But if that's what's going to drive a 16% drop in...
Well, they haven't made that connection. That's one that we're assuming. But I mean, it shows that the thinking hasn't really evolved. Now, to be fair, the PTI is facing pretty substantial...
This would be very difficult to put together.
No. It's just when... who's supposed to put together a manifesto? जब आप जेलों से भाग रहे हैं, जब आपके पीछे पुलिस पड़ी हुई है, when you have lawyers... I mean, you're running out of lawyers because you're having to put up your lawyers as candidates. I mean, it's a whole mess. And I think they're under a lot of pressure. So maybe it's unfair to pile on the PTI. So let's move to the PML.
I do want to say one thing. Now, this may be a good thing, but when I read this I had a little bit of an issue with investing in artificial intelligence. And it just sounds like a buzzword to me here, because one of the things, like, you know how artificial intelligence has been developed is you've got like these massive data sets. They've been running them for years. Cheese up nikal ke aayi. Like, for us, whether it's an application thing or whether we should not be concentrating on some new form of expansion of the sort of economic pie in the IT sector, but overall skills. And I don't know if that's a legitimate criticism to have, but when I saw this, I just thought,
well, there's a lot of that. And so let's move away from PTI just for a second and look at what PML-N says on the economy. I mean, bring CAD down by bringing it in the range of 1.5% of GDP. This too is, I mean, the current account deficit in 2022 was over $17 billion. So that's 1% of GDP is $3.7 billion. $17 billion is like 5% of GDP. So again, to bring it from 5% to 1.5%, you're talking about something in the neighborhood of $12 billion in 2022 dollars. Remember, we've had devaluation.
Again, there's another problem in this also, is that the good times the PML-N manages to bring is at the back of increasing the CAD.
Well, that of course that's the theory, and they haven't indicated any lesson learning.
Exactly.
On that. So I think it's legitimate to ask, what's going to be different this time?
Exactly. Like, how are you going to bring it down if your whole economic approach is essentially...
how are you going to bring it down, period, man? $12 billion per annum jo gap hai, based on 2022 data. By the way, 2022 you benefited from some growth.
Yes.
It was 23 where it started going down, and then 2023 was a disaster, and then where we are, and of course it was the PDM that was in charge.
Actually, yes, and I'll tell you, like, this point that you're making on the economics is also interesting. Is that okay? Fine, let's say they do bring down the CAD to 1.5%.
Yep.
We've seen the CAD come down over the past 2-3 months, where it's in a slightly positive territory. What does that do is that it also constrains the economy, but they're asking for...
It's called keto, man. Stop having carbs, you'll stop getting... I mean, we both kind of know a little about
carbs. So at the same time, you want 6% GDP growth, and if the only way we know how to shrink the CAD is by actually shrinking the economy, so growth uske saath nahi aayegi. There's these interesting...
By the way, can I say, I'm wicked impressed by the sophistication of your economic knowledge, which I know might sound patronizing or whatever, but I don't care. But it's very impressive. You're exactly right. You can't have... There is no evidence in Pakistan. And I had Dr. Sajid Amin explain it. He's at SDPI, brilliant scholar and economist. And so we were having a discussion about the work that we're doing, and he's a big proponent of what you've advocated. There's no evidence that Pakistan can grow and also shrink the current account deficit, shrink the FD. The only way you can do this historically is that basically you grow on borrowed money and on borrowed time. So that's why every time you grow, you end up crashing, because that's not a sustainable way of doing it. You're not really a productive, capable economy.
Or the theory is that even if you're growing on borrowed money, but you're sufficiently growing the economy to pay back, which never happens because hamari hukumat gir aa jati hain after the third year.
But and also as they're exiting, they only want to hit the door on
the back of good inflation,
the other people coming in, and the poor people, really. And that's exactly what we saw with the petrol sort of subsidy that Shaukat Tareen and Imran Khan enacted. I'm looking for other topics to move beyond the economy and also to have like a well-rounded discussion.
One thing about the foreign policy, right?
Oh, we're back at that.
Usme mujhe wo dekha hai ki like a lot of this is really, like some of this is so informed by the past 4-5 months. Because PML-N का देख लिया ना कि उन्होंने कहा सर ये चेक करे मेरा presentation.
उन्होंने हाफिज साहब को राइट का इंडिकेटर दिया है, लेकिन उनका इरादा लेफ्ट मोड़ने का।
But जो best है कि PTI thought this is our time to also explain.
Oh, yeah. So what
we are following Pakistan first policy.
Wait, is that the first time you've heard Pakistan first, or is that harking back to October 1999?
Yes.
Which, by the way, has been the bugaboo. I mean, they've carried this burden of essentially being Musharraf version 2.0. That's what the cabinet was for the longest time. और इस सारे उसके बाद May 10th, 11th, 12th के बाद भी अभी भी आके घोड़ा जो है वहीं आके रुके।
नहीं, I mean, if my thing on this would be is कि यार please आप थोड़ा expand on this, ठीक है ना, कि if you're really...
What do you mean by Pakistan first? Well, I guess they mean like, no more ciphers.
No more ciphers.
Transparent diplomacy.
Exactly.
Everything that's said everywhere will be broadcast to everyone at all times. Yeah.
And no spur of the moment comments in other countries. ठीक है ना, ये भी इसमें लिख देते।
अच्छा, नहीं वो नहीं लिख रही हैं, थोड़ा सा तो आप क्रेडिट दें उनको। Here's another one. Let's put up the nutrition slide, because that's another thing that some of my colleagues have been working on. So you have this. I think you can look on the screen, but you have a massive nutrition challenge, and it's multi-layered. Children are stunted and wasting at rates that are comparable to sub-Saharan Africa. Women and their nutrition is severely compromised. Now, as a result, you have a lot of really challenging sort of realities as far as human capability. Because if lactating mothers or pregnant mothers are lacking nutrition, then they're passing on less nutrients to the fetus. It's a really complex challenge. Here's the agriculture and food security. That's fine, or we can leave it on screen. Ye reality hai, lekin if you go to the, did you say PILAP?
PILAP.
All right.
Yeah.
So PILAP's summary, PML-N says on agriculture and food security, I don't see anything about nutrition at all. And now, by the way, there may be something in these manifestos on nutrition, to be fair, right?
Yeah, and PILAP would have had to exclude quite a bit, right?
Yeah. But there's a lot about agriculture and free subsidies. Oh, so the PPP says free 1,000-day nutrition program for new mothers. So that's nice.
That's a good idea.
Eradicate severe food security within 5 years. Now that I have a problem. Is it okay? How? Right? Because actually the worst performing province,
yes,
as you can imagine, on nutrition and child stunting is what?
Sindh.
Traditionally,
yeah.
I mean, it's really disturbing. Acha, phir there's PTIs, and again, there's some interesting ideas, but you don't really get the sense that these are serious manifestos by people in a serious effort to address the principal nutrition, the range of challenges that are emerging from the nutrition crisis.
On all three, I mean, I have one thing
you that I take it off now. Yeah.
Worried for a bit is like, in agriculture and food security, they talk elsewhere in the manifestos, they talk about maybe having solar tube wells and all that, but tube wells are a massive problem.
Yeah,
because no groundwater, and secondly, we're also growing, we need to change some of our crops. They're too water intensive. We have to price water. Maybe it's there somewhere, but I see that as like one of the big challenges of this country, because we're going to wait till we have, what was it, Cape Town, which ran out of water or whatever. And again, I once remembered is like, the water you and I consume at home is like such a small fraction of the water that's wasted. It's all agriculture. And we're taking out groundwater. And one state that did it in the US, which is massive, is California. And they've pumped out so much groundwater for things like cashew nuts and all that. Strategically bad, because this is something that takes thousands of years to fill.
Is it cashews or pistachios?
Pistachios, yeah. Sorry. And, but yeah.
Wait, aren't you going to take a moment to appreciate how did I know that?
Yeah, I do appreciate it. How did you know that?
I don't know. It's just, yeah.
But actually, when you were a child and you were having the juice boxes, Sunny D, uski piche likhe California raisins. California.
अच्छा ना अब तो California raisins को Sunny D के साथ खिला रहा है, मतलब खाम मतलब random जो है, ये वो तुम्हारी Edwards College वाली हरकत है.
Yes.
Okay. So I'll tell you how I know, and actually credit to, it's a very close friend of mine that I kind of grew up with, went to Lums with me, was a couple of years junior, and he's an originally A and B supporter, and now a raging Imran Khan supporter.
Okay.
And he's a farmer in Charsadda. And he and I were talking, we drove down to South Punjab for some fotki last year. And, he gave me like the full spectrum. Usme usne pistachio दरख्तों की बात की.
अच्छा.
तो मुझे अचानक वो याद आया कि उधर issue pistachios का है. शायद cashews का भी हो, but yeah. So, let's move on to a topic that you and I have worked together on, worked separately on, feel passionate. And I know that a lot of people that watch or listen to How to Pakistan are significantly invested in this, and that's education.
Yeah.
So we don't have page numbers, unfortunately, but it's on the climate and environment page. I think you've skipped ahead, maybe.
Maybe I've skipped ahead.
Yeah. So education, how do I do this without sounding angry?
Just go with it.
Okay, so PML-N has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Surely PILAP has missed something here. अब मैं openly, मैं guarantee से कह रहा हूँ कि हो नहीं सकता कि इतनी तजुर्बाकार
हुकूमत
से नहीं अभी नहीं party. It's the 7th of Feb. It's not the 9th.
आज RSPR ने results नहीं declare की.
यार तुम खामखा में फौज को target कर रहे हो ना मैं बता रहा हूँ. You're going to be very popular with this freedom fighters movement. Expand.
Only go on other Mehdi shows if you already have US nationality.
Yeah, I mean, it's part funny and part tragic, right?
Yes.
I mean, these people are these people have been traditionally the strongest supporters of the state and its narrative. And frankly, heart of hearts, I think, like I have a problem with them, right? So there's not an endorsement of what they're doing, but I think it's a loss for Pakistan to lose people like that. Concurrent to the fact that, you know, the separatist movement in Balochistan is at its, I think, maybe at its worst. Concurrent to the fact that the Taliban have now, I think, just openly, they've adopted the TTP. Concurrent to the fact that India is going to do what it's going to do, no matter how much friendship we... So, I mean, when you put all this together, you actually need people who support the state and who are invested in it and who, you know, love the troops.
Like, I mean, you know, the idea of a patriot is somebody who disagrees with the state and is open because he feels that, you know, the state's interest.
This is my point of departure, though. These people aren't disagreeing with the state.
No, but that's because you didn't let me finish. My point was, I've always, even people I don't agree with, but if they're on another thing, I think there's some kind of merit, because there's also injustices that inform it. But in this certain category, I'm now actually looking at people who are trying for insurrection. They're saying things that cannot possibly be true. And the only aim is that if we don't have it the way we wanted it, like we want this place,
we're going to burn it.
We're going to flatten this place. And that, of course, is like even my threshold is past. Like I'm saying, like this is actively bad for this country. And like it's capitalism that's moving this, because
it's the YouTube.
It's the YouTube money.
I mean, this is money that I think for a lot of people, these are sources of income that even 5 years ago they wouldn't have imagined that this was possible.
It's very hard to make that kind of money, right? And actually being in foreign countries.
But in a sense, we're following in great footsteps. We're trying to build a YouTube sort of...
Hamara abhi jo follower count hai, we're still around 990,000 away from Baghawat.
So if you love Pakistan, do not subscribe. Do not click like. Do not comment. Please comment. Please like. Also, can I say that after years after years of being interrupted by me, this is literally the first time you've said, if you'd let me finish.
Because you're making my point for me. Can I say this once more?
Can I do a blanket apology for all the times I've interrupted?
I've never...
No, I know, but I'm saying I'm conscious of this, and I love doing this with you.
No, likewise.
Well, by the way, we haven't done like a lot of love sort of for the audience. And I think it's important. We don't agree on actually a lot of things.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
And it's never gotten between us.
Yes.
The only time we've had fights is when there's been a genuine anger.
Yeah.
And that sometimes because of misunderstanding, otherwise. But it's a relationship that sustains.
Yeah.
I guess my kind of message to folks that are watching, there's a lot of like intishad and negativity. And I know it's in people's homes and, you know, cousins, friends, relatives. I hope nobody's domestic situation, but I'm sure there's husband and wives that fall out on this. Don't fall out on this, man. These guys don't care about you that much. You can't care about them that much.
Okay, we're not going to get into this, but I'm going to say this one quoted. Like, मेरा एक rule है कि like यार लोग online बहुत कुछ कहते हैं, but if somebody I know says it, मुझे बुरा लगता है, because I'm like, we have a history, and you couldn't call me and all
exactly,
ठीक है ना? और उसमें I've often found is like people shouldn't, because I'm looking at close friends in WhatsApp groups and crazy stuff, and it's just call one another. Like we won't get into it. You unfollowed me on Insta, and then you told me you followed me back, but you didn't.
I don't know what this man is talking about. You have no evidence of this.
But anyhow.
But
no, but that's just it. Like,
but more than call. Don't forget that it's the person that you love or are close to. Or I have friends who are. You'll be surprised. Like I mean, serious Insafis, like hardcore. And let me put it this way: if they didn't live abroad, they'd be in jail right now.
Then they wouldn't say these things.
But again, that's a K move. That is a K move. Let me say this. So, after May 9th, I was with them because they move in groups.
Yes, they move in groups.
and they hunt in packs, and I'm, of course, Sheila or whatever, Razia. So, we're talking, and it kept getting more and more heated about, again, a lot of the conspiracy theorists, and look, so many conspiracy theories have come true, you never know. So I always caveat. But, I have a certain sense of what happened and what should have happened and what was happening. And of course, there was a lot that was wrong.
Yeah.
And there is a lot that's wrong that's happened to the PTI, that's been done to the PTI. I think we have to be very clear about that. They can, as we were talking, I could feel that this is going to end up in somebody walking away. Right? Yes. It kept escalating. And so I grabbed this guy. We were walking, actually, in New York. This is last summer. And I grabbed him by the arm and I said, you know that, I love you. And, you mean a lot to me. Yeah. And this, whatever, however, this can't keep escalating, right? And, he kind of hugged me and picked me up and, we had a laugh. But it's real feelings. So I think it's, don't change your opinion for people, but also don't forget people are people, and this stuff can't matter that much. Certainly not to destroy people's personal relationships.
Absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit about education, and then I want to end with kind of the topic that is closely related to education that I always call you and ask you about in terms of understanding Gen Z and youth. Yeah. So on education. Before we go through what the parties have said, I just want to give people a sense of, again, something we're working on. If you put up the learning poverty slide, I don't know why my name is popping up at the bottom. Can we remove that? Yeah, thanks. So, the point is, you can see on the screen, Pakistan is in the Afghanistan category on learning outcomes. Whether you measure it through the World Bank's metrics, come to the next one, or you measure it through the Lay's metric. Again, Pakistani kids are far behind, even within the region. The only comparator is Afghanistan. Or you measure it through what's called the TIMS, which is a global standardized testing thing, where Pakistan is second from the bottom.
And
second from the bottom.
TIMS doesn't do Afghanistan, or does it?
No. TIMS only does 60 countries. Pakistan's 59th, I think. Yeah. Let's go to the next slide, because that'll tell us who's at the bottom with us. No, ACER also, which is the Bela Raza Jameel organization, and that also is a regional thing, and again, consistently very poor results. Come to the next one. There it is. So the one with Pakistan is the Philippines, which is one level above Pakistan. Okay. Or one level below. This is a really interesting slide, and we're doing a lot of work on parental satisfaction. Where it's weird that the two top countries, Singapore and Hong Kong, have parental satisfaction levels of 63 and 54%, respectively. Guess what the bottom two countries have in terms of parental satisfaction with learning outcomes?
It's higher than this.
It's higher than the ones at the top. That tells you a lot about how badly off Pakistani families and parents are and the kind of work we need. Now, this is the country we live in.
Yes.
What does the PML-N say about education?
Both PML-N and PTI have quite a big focus this time on higher education. They've got a school milk program. Actually, this is ridiculous.
There's nothing there. I'm just looking at it and I'm
fuming. They didn't even bother.
And I honestly...
ये क्यों लिखा है? ये 4 point क्यों लिखा है?
No, but I'll also say that actually partly ये हमारा और आपका failure. I think I have failed and you have failed. Because even with whatever the situation is, why haven't we been able to advocate for something serious, man? The PPP is the only one that actually seems to have done at least some thinking about it, although it's very Alif Elan, it's very 2013. But at least it's there. They actually have a stipend for school-going children, hybrid learning systems, school clustering, transportation. These are cutting-edge topics in Pakistan. They commit to 5% of GDP, which is, again, so they say clearly 17 billion उन्होंने लिखा हुआ है. अच्छा, यार मुझे कोई बताए कि इस वक्त 2.4% है according to the PTI. तो कह रहे हैं कि ये डबल करेंगे. PTI भी ये कह रही है. अच्छा नहीं, वो कह रही है 4% तक लेके जाएंगे, पीपीपी कह रही है 5% तक ले जाएंगे। तो भाई 5% तक लेके जाने के लिए you have to basically double the existing spending.
Yes.
So 1% of GDP, again, for a reminder, $3.7 billion in rupees.
Yeah.
2% is 7.4. Let's say it's about 8.5 billion.
Yeah.
And now we're saying that so 17 billion. So this $8.5 billion, which becomes a lot of rupees. 300, roughly 279.
And this is on an annual basis.
And
right?
this is on, so where's this money going to come
Where's this
from? Again, you're reducing taxes, you're giving freebies in the economic section, you're reducing bijli ke bill by 20-30%.
300 unit free there.
And you're also increasing, like this, these are deliberate, I don't want to say deliberate, but deliberate or undeliberate. This is really dangerous stuff because it's basically fantasy fiction. Now, everybody says civilian baladasti, that political parties should be respected. And of course, no party should have to go through what PTI is going through right now. PML-N went through earlier, and I'm even happy to say PTI is going through something worse because the crime is worse. The attack on the state institutions in the way that it happened was different than what the crimes, so to speak, of the Sharifs.
But again, here, I mean, now I'm going through the PTI one. This is really interesting. I'll be honest. Even then, PPP ka, like you say, it's like 2013 wala itna percentage ye
so they're 10 years behind,
10 years
but it's still, you can relate to it, that like it's a serious.
Lekin PML-N is like, mera abhi bhi point hai, don't even write this. Ab chhod dete.
It's devastating.
Like
PTI ne bhi, by the way, at least koshish ki hai. I think they've mixed up a bunch of things, and there's too much Ataur Rahman here, frankly. It's all, sort of.
Well, I mean, 90% literacy in 5 years. I don't know if that's even.
Okay, so now let's talk about that. I think that's a really interesting one. 90% literacy. Literacy rate, 15 saal ke people above the age of 15 that can basically write a sentence and read a sentence, and I think read like a paragraph and write a sentence, I think, in any language. It's a very low bar. Currently, the literacy rate is 60%. It's hovered at, when they change how they measure it, it goes down to 58, then it comes back up to 60. I don't think it's ever been above 60 formally.
Okay.
So now this party is claiming that they're going to bring it to 90%.
In 5
so
years.
The population of above 15-year-olds, roughly in Pakistan, is about 210 million. Just off the top of my head, right? Just basically knowing some basics about the demographic reality. So let's say it's 200 million people. So if 60% of them can read, what we're saying is that 0.6 multiplied by 200 is 120 million people. So that means that there's 80 million people that can't read or write. So to get from 60% to 90%, you need to add 30%. 30% of 200 million is 60 million people. Let's see. This party, a serious party that's governed this country, is claiming that they're going to add somehow 60 million people in terms of their ability to read and write. How? So this is what is heartbreaking about the degree of seriousness that's gone into the manifesto. Again, I'll caveat. PTI is going through a lot. Like if they get like an E or a D in the grading,
it's fine.
You can grade them up.
They can't even meet anymore.
Exactly. No, it's not even a joke. They can't meet. They can't campaign.
One thing that I have enjoyed, and I'm going back to the PML on this because, I mean, I went through this before. But
I can't tell if you're more shocked than I am, but
I am supremely shocked. Ye jo 5 points hai.
Maybe PILAP missed something.
Maybe. Okay, let's say, let's put it on PILAP. The last time we did it.
You know what?
We were wrong. PILAP got it right.
Well, luckily, we live in the age where we can just pull things up.
Let's just check this. But, my point is like, okay, so this is interesting. Like, in terms of like the comparison of these manifestos, so labor pay, PTI has nothing. PTI has no part of the manifesto. Housing mein, PML-N has nothing.
Really?
Yes. Interesting, isn't it? Or IT pay, PPP has nothing. So it's just interesting that, one would imagine after all these years, some of these things are now standard columns. Because they've done this over the past, 15, 20 years to chal raha hai abhi tak. And so they've left some of this empty. क्या सीन है? PILAP ने खुलासे में बहुत जोर डाला है या वाकई में इन्होंने सिर्फ यही 5 नुकात डाले थे?
Yeah,
Expand school for brick-kiln workers, that's one. Increase access to higher education from 13 to 20%. Expand the school milk program. Do we have a school milk program still in force?
Yes.
Is it only in the Punjab?
We must. Hold on. I'm trying to read through. So I'll say that PILAP has missed it because there's a couple of pages of content here.
Okay.
And PILAP, there's no way that these 2 or 3 pages, I think it's a little unfair.
Yeah. वैसे ही शुरू हुए?
नहीं, वैसे ही नहीं शुरू हुए because I'm going through it and there's just, it's like this massive wish list kind of thing. Na?
Okay.
But to be fair, PML-N ke usme, there's like 4 or 5 pages of promises.
Okay.
You can see it here, right?
Yeah.
Nurturing national identity, pride, sense of belonging, multi-grade teaching. Like there is a degree of sophistication, right?
Multi-grade and all that.
And I think inhone thodi si PILAP, and PILAP I expect more from because some of the leadership of PILAP is very invested. I know Dr. Amjad Waheed is involved at the board level. Naseem Beg is involved. These guys are serious people. So I think they might have missed a trick here.
Yeah.
And there is more material. Look, the point is it what the country needs? I mean, in the primary and secondary education section.
Yeah, but actually, I now think we have to caveat this a little. This is a bit more serious than the way we just discussed it because of this summary here. The summary, I think, needed a lot more work.
No, but I'm going back to, so what I think the PILAP summary also missed is the 4% of GDP spending, which, by the way, Ishaq Dar promised me a long time back. Yeah, so I think this is unfair. The PILAP summary, Yato, we're missing a page or something?
No, we're not missing a page.
I'm trying to be,
charitable.
I think, people make honest mistakes.
Which is fine. No, I think it's just...
But I'm glad because mujhe actually yaqeen nahi aa raha tha ki PML-N, because I know
I kept going back to it.
Like, I know Shaza Fatma Khwaja, very committed to education. But uske saath aur, I mean, you can feel however you want about her, but, she knows this stuff. I mean, Shahbaz Sharif himself is heavily
so that's what I was also thinking.
Like, so, and you see that. Actually, what you see is the imprint of the Shahbaz Sharif kind of chief minister period. Having said that,
that means we need to be a bit more careful on treating this as the final word going forward.
Well, we have.
क्या पता PML-N ने कोई housing पे कुछ चीज दिखा दी हो जो इसमें नहीं है.
Should we check that as well?
We should check that कि housing कुछ है because this means. I wonder, or the fact that PPP has nothing on IT, which I think again.
Partner, there's no. There's 3. The word housing appears 3 times.
Okay.
There's no section on housing. It's references to. So
maybe this is the one.
No, I think, look, PILAP has done a great service just by doing what they did, however good or bad it is, because it gives us a vantage point.
Yes.
Aaj getting together with you to talk about this, and I want to do the youth stuff as well. And we'll end with that. But I honestly think it's not enough to just have manifestos. There needs to be a conversation around serious topics. So that's why I pulled in some of the data and put that on the screen. It's a bad situation economically in terms of people's motivation. The election is not going to be the perfect election by any stretch. It's not even, it's definitely not even as good as 2013. Now I know that there's a very partisan debate about is it as bad as 2018? If you're PTI, of course not, because I mean you're on the boots on the other, on the other foot. And it's true that I can directly count more people that have suffered. But I mean, I'll also be honest with you. What did Kamarul Islam Raja ever do to end up in jail in the way that he did? What did Fawad Hassan? Somebody gave a reference of his brother and how he's alone or whatever. Sorry. Sometimes it just... But, you know, Fawad was in jail for like two years.
Yeah,
right?
For nothing.
Like, so yes, what's happening right now is absolutely wrong. And quantum-wise, I think it's more widespread than what the PMLN faced.
Definitely. Yeah.
But the PMLN also faced a series of ridiculous things, including Supreme Court judges calling them the Godfather. I actually said it in a meaningful way. Like, I really do think that constitutional democracy, in the way that we understood it post Charter of Democracy, Nawaz Sharif delivered that. Now, he's helped roll up some of it in the last, year and a half. And it looks like we're going to be in for a really interesting few weeks or months, especially if he wins. But bravo to PILAP for doing this. Bravo to the PTI workers that helped put together their manifesto, to the serious people in the PPP, serious people, PML-N and other parties that I think put together manifestos. This stuff is hard, but we need to do better. And I think that's really the point of the conversation.
I agree.
Speaking of doing better, the most important topic, I think, as you know, the country below 23 age is 125 million. That's how big the country is. So youth is an important topic. And I just wanted to...
So I
don't know if listeners... Sorry.
I have a different perspective on this now. And what I think is that, look, that whole thing about the demographic dividend is that if you have a population that's younger, so you need to, they're more productive. You don't have to take care of the older people as much. Eventually it becomes 50-50 or it changes over time. So we're in a period where everybody's young. You need to invest in these people and then you get outsized rewards in terms of productivity and growth. Ours is that we're not investing in our young people, but like one stat that always stuck to me is that the East Asian tigers, when they grew, 1/3 of it came down to the age structure that they were enjoying, which was just like ours. However, now I just think because we've missed half the boat, one of the key things is that there's not going to be enough to go around, right? Like the rate of job creation that's required, the indebtedness. My fear is the boiling point, that the one thing this country has is that, we haven't had large-scale rioting, we haven't had large-scale insecurity through average citizens, which happens in countries. And maybe it's a reflection, like I think you and I had that discussion on social media and all that. We have to figure out a way, how do we absolutely disagree, or that we can say that there are going to be pockets who don't buy into our program, but we have to learn how to live together. And that I'm seeing withering away. Like, I actually see that as the greatest challenge. I agree, education, health, whatever. But this, one of the things that any nation, any leader would fear is that if I have teams of young people who've got no work, no access to cultural activities, to other things, and that just boils over. So anyhow, that's a different direction from this, obviously. I know we're discussing manifesto.
But let's go with that, because I think it's really beautifully articulated. What I was going to say before you interrupted me. was that?
Put it down in your diary for the first time. Someone did.
Finally. My instincts as a Zedi are to, live up the oppression. So thank you for that. Dekho, first I wanted to say the work you've done on understanding the youth, I think, is seminal work. I think you and Nadeem Farooq Paracha and others, I know that at least the first round was with the British Council. I think the second round as well. Like
I know.
I mean, some groundbreaking research on youth.
It was. I would say I was peripherally involved. There were so many really great people. David Stevens, he led a lot of the thinking on this.
Brilliant guy.
Shazia Khawer. Fantastic. So I mean, I can't take. I mean, part of the popularization process maybe, but it's these people who did amazing work.
It really was. And again, I think we'll share links on those studies. I think they're a real good snapshot of adults today, because the first one was 2010.
Yes.
So it's 14 years later. I mean, it'll be amazing to go back and see what those guys were saying and how that evolved over. Anyway, the point I was making, I wanted listeners and viewers to know of like your real expertise in this. And I mean, I've gone through the PILAP summary. I mean, some of this is, maybe it's PILAP, maybe it's PML-N, but PML-N ke usme likha hua hai, solar-powered agriculture tube wells for young farmers. I'm laughing because, come on, like, I mean, that's not youth policy, right?
It's not youth policy.
It's not dealing with demographics.
In the sense, like, you're going to say that I've got a small-scale farmer and the guy next to it, he's 5 years younger, we give the money to that dude. Like, you know, it's incredibly arbitrary to cut them off because it's not a youth issue.
Yep. So I want to read out, related to this, get your reaction, and then we'll close out for the day. I'd encourage folks to, again, go and download the PILAP summary. It's a useful thing. And then if you think aapki party ke saath zyadati ho rahi, then go and check their manifesto and read it. And write to people. Actually, I know it's counterintuitive even to me. It's not down about the prospects of how we're going to emerge out of this poly crisis that I've really struggled with whether I'm going to vote tomorrow or not. And I still haven't made up my mind. I was telling you, I told Lazair that I nahi vote karna, right? I'm just going to, not vote.
But I think you should.
You're voting?
I'm going to Peshawar. I'm voting.
But here's the fear. And I want to articulate this very clearly. Just before we started, this friend of mine randomly sent me a link to a Saad Hussain Rizvi YouTube link. And I said, send me the summary. So now again, this is on this friend. I'm just going to read out. I said, give me the summary, we'll watch later. So usne bheja. Kehta hai, threaten PML-N to avoid any sort of violence and rigging, or they will taste the reaction from Aka ke Ghulam. Then he uses some language, but he says, he goes after, this is Saad Hussain Rizvi, he goes after Imran, Bilawal, PML-N, and then he goes after, he mentions a specific rank in the army that is not general. And he says he goes after them and said, he says something incendiary. That I think that YouTube channel is going to, get them in trouble for saying stuff like that. Why do I bring up TLP and what Saad Hussain Rizvi is saying? I think that this whole, we amongst the kind of either elite or elite adjacent or English speaking or business class Pakistani, so to speak, hamara ek wo hai ki we have been in a long-term relationship with warning. This will happen, this will happen, this will happen. And a lot of times, it's like the frogs boiling. Some stuff has already happened. TLP is a reality, in my view, principally because nobody is asking the jobless, prospectless, young Pakistani man and woman. And they're 22 years old, Fasi. That's the center of the country. Hey, man.
It's a great conduit for anger. It is and people actually, I don't mean to excuse them or anything, but people need to channel anger. They need to channel these things, and that's why parties like this, they can prove to be incredibly dangerous. And you're right. I mean, I actually think the issue is not what you just showed me, but it was an issue in 2018.
Exactly right. It was an issue even before that.
Even before that.
Frankly, the country's changed a lot in the last 10 years. And sometimes it's hard to recognize that the changes are much bigger than the kind of ambulance chasing of the news cycle. Right? Court ne kya keh diya, kaun se case mein kya ho gaya. That's kind of very superficial, but there are some real fundamental changes that are taking place. Fasi Zaka, I had a lot of learning moments in this conversation.
Likewise. And I have been telling everyone that please go to Musharraf's analysis of numbers in the last episode. I love that. I've been telling everyone because...
but don't play it up too much because, I mean, tomorrow if somebody comes back with 160 seats, it's going to...
Meaning, I saw this one leaking over 120 seats.
Mujhe kuch nahi pata. Let me own that from the start. I honestly don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but I'll re-articulate my hope. My hope is people come out in big numbers.
Absolutely.
And actually, nobody gets a thumping mandate. Not because I don't want a functional country. You've heard me talk up Mohammed bin Salman and that model. And that's a series, again, for another time. Why should we not have a thumping majority? Because we need a country that learns how to work together.
I agree with that. So, I mean, this thing I was talking to you about the youth, that's the fundamental issue that I see going forward. And the sad thing is the way you just framed it is that our supra elite who've been at it for 40 years need to learn this lesson.
I think some of them have learned it, but they've unlearned it because they are chasing likes and retweets.
And they're also opportunists.
Don't forget to like and click and subscribe and
we need
comment.
to get 1 million so that
990,900 and
whatever. Till then, like, we can live here. All right, buddy.
Jazakallah khair. Okay. Good luck tomorrow. Travel safe.
Thank you.
Please, if you're watching in Pakistan, go out and vote. If you're abroad, don't give in to the negative demons. Things are bad. Inshallah, they're going to get better. And they're going to start getting better from tomorrow. Suraj uttega. Allah apni barakat aur apna jo hai rahm aur karam nazil farmayega. Jazakallah khair again.
Okay.
Thanks for doing this. We'll see you guys real soon.